All right, folks, let's go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dan Lear, Head of Marketing and Partnerships at Gravity Legal, and I'm here with my colleague, Emery Wager. As you'll see in the webinar, the relationship that Emery and I have reminds me of when I was working as a paralegal for Microsoft. I worked for Microsoft Game Studios, and I worked for another attorney, and we actually were able to get our names into the credits. This is a long story for a really dumb dad joke, so sorry to subject you to it, but we got our names in the credits of some of these games. And under Microsoft Game Studios legal, it said, my colleague whose name was Don McGowan, it said takes the credit, Don McGowan does the work, Dan Lear. And that's basically how it works here. Like, I take all the credit, I do all the talking, and Emery actually does all the work. So he can introduce himself, but he's done a lot of the heavy lifting in sort of really educating himself about Zapier and how it works. So we'll dig in here, but really pleased to have you folks with us. I assume that most of you have at least a passing familiarity or at least an understanding of what Zapier is, but I'm just going to take a couple of minutes and set the stage. And let me also say a couple of quick things before we even do that. First, we will be recording and sharing this webinar. We'll send you a link to it when it's done, and we'll also put it on our YouTube channel. So feel free to not worry about taking notes and just soak it in, as you'll definitely have a chance to see all of this later. Second, we definitely intend for this to be interactive. We haven't prepared an entire hour's worth of content because we definitely want to hear from you. So if you have questions, just go ahead and put them in the chat. And while either of us are talking, the other one will be monitoring those questions. And so we'll be sure to answer those questions, or at least do our very best to do so that this can be as interactive and frankly helpful to you as possible. So with the housekeeping out of the way, and we'll give you our contact information at the end as well, so that if you have questions, you can reach out to us separately. So with the housekeeping out of the way, Zapier is, I'm going to assume that most of you at least have a passing familiarity with it, but I'm going to start at a relatively sort of low or high, depending on how you want to think about it, level, in kind of discussing kind of what it is and what it does. So I think most of you at least understand that the power of automating certain processes in your law practice can be really meaningful and really valuable. And like payments, which is what we do at Gravity Legal, is a really obvious place to look for automation. It's something that's fairly routine, but it's also something that you need to do pretty often in order to ensure that you have a going concern, that you have a business. So the challenge is that automation, really good automation, or even passable automation, requires integrations. It requires connections between different types of software, so that you don't end up having to go to 3 different places just to do one fairly routine, fairly common task. And the challenge is that with integrations is that there are firms that use, I'm sure like yours, that use a lot of different types of software. And it's really a challenge for companies like ours to build a direct integration to each and every possible software that a firm that we work with might use. It's expensive for us, it's expensive for the other, and it's complicated as well. And so that's where Zapier comes in. Zapier acts, if you want to think is kind of about it this way, is almost like an integrations middle person or almost marketplace, where if a company builds an integration to Zapier, then that company or that software, that platform can integrate with any other platform or any other software that also integrates to Zapier. And so it really lowers the cost of the ability to build these integrations and connect what would otherwise be disparate platforms and disparate pieces of software. And as Emery will discuss as we launch into this, kind of the best use case for Zapier is kind of simple, straightforward, and again, he's got a much more sophisticated way of talking about this, types of tasks. But I want to say, and again, I'll just give a quick shout out to the blog, and we can talk about this later, that I wrote a fairly lengthy article and also recently did a podcast about some Zapier processes that I've seen firms do that are 10, 15 steps long and handle a fairly complex and fairly sophisticated kind of different types of processes. Now, again, there's risks that come with that. Zapier may not be the ideal tool for this, but there are firms who have really taken it sort of to the next level, so to speak, or to the nth level even. So that's what Zapier is, and that's how it works. And I think let's if there's not any questions about that, Emery, unless there's anything you'd want to add there, I'd say let's dive into the meat of the topic.
Cool, thanks Dan. So what we going to chat about today, what tasks we recommend automating with Zapier, and we'll talk about kind of the Zapier framework of triggers and actions, sort of if this happens, then do this, which is kind of the foundation of Zapier. And then the majority will be just going through, I only have really one slide beyond this. The majority will just be me sharing my screen and going through and actually making a Zap. And if you got the homework email yesterday and you want to follow along, feel free to get all those applications booted up. If not, as Dan mentioned, this will all be recorded, so you can do that later. We'll talk a little bit about testing a Zap, and then we'll also talk about at the end, but also kind of in line as I'm going, I'll talk about some of the built-in features that Zapier has to do things like filtering data, filtering triggers, timing logic, and other kind of data formatting. So if you think about tasks in terms of like, what are the consequences if something goes wrong with that task? And what is the complexity level? Zapier, as Dan mentioned, there are firms who have really taken it to a high level, but my general recommendation from using the tool quite a bit is to kind of keep Zapier to the low consequence, low complexity tasks. So like if you're considering using Zapier to completely automate the process of doing all your trust accounting, and you're going to have Zapier automatically fire your three-way trust account off to the to the bar every month without reviewing it, that might be a little bit too much. So especially,
and just to chime in, Emery, I think also certainly if you're just getting started, it's a good recommendation to start small, start simple until your level of comfort with Zapier increases.
Yeah, definitely. So this is Zapier 101. So we'll definitely be down in this kind of low complexity, low consequence. So when we built our Zapier integration, we deliberately did not build it so that you could automate the process of actually processing a payment. You can only send out requests. So we didn't want someone to make a mistake on Zapier and fire off $100 payments to the credit cards that they had on file at their firm. So again, I would recommend keeping in this kind of low consequence, low complexity here. So with that, let's dive right in. We are going to make a Zap together, and if you have questions, definitely feel free to put them in the chat. And if you want to follow along, that's great as well. So the first thing I'm going to do is I've got my Zapier account set up. I have a paid account, so I can do some multi-step Zaps, as I'll mention in a second. But basically, what I first do. Yep.
I was just going to pipe up. So, folks, when you sign up for your initial, if you did that again, if you did the homework, you'll get, I think, a 14-day trial of a paid plan, kind of like most SaaS offerings have. And so you'll get a chance to try some of these more sophisticated features, but even the free plan, I think, allows for single step Zaps, like a lot of the ones we'll be creating today.
Yep, definitely. So not surprisingly, the first thing I'm going to do is make a Zap. So click here. and it's going to give me a blank template with a trigger and an action here. So if this happens, if the trigger happens, then do this. So always think in Zapier, it's if this, then this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to connect two Google applications. We're going to connect Gmail and Google Sheets. And we're basically going to say if a certain type of email comes in, I want to print details of that email into Google Sheets. So say you want to be on the lookout for a client that mentions a specific phrase, invoice or something like that. This is a very flexible Zap, and I personally use it to get details out of email. It's also very, very simple, so it's a good place to start. So again, if you've followed along with the homework, you've created a Google Sheet here with 3 categories: from, subject, and date and time. As I alluded to in the email, we're going to print details from the email that comes in into this field here. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to set up my trigger. So when a certain type of email comes in, that's what's going to kind of set off this automation. But before I select Gmail, I want to give a quick nod to Zapier's built-in scheduling tool. So if you don't necessarily want your trigger to be something that happens in a separate application, you can use Zapier's scheduler to have the trigger happen on regular intervals. So if you wanted to send yourself an email to get up and walk around from your desk every hour, you could do that using Zapier's built-in scheduler. So
it's the small things.
Yep. So we're not going to dive into that. We're gonna stay the course here and link Gmail. So the first thing we're going to do is select our application, and then based on the integration that Gmail has built with Zapier, that's going to give us these options for a trigger event here.
Now, Emery, a quick question. You have already connected your Gmail to Zapier, right? If you were setting this up for the first time, would you need to go and log into Gmail so that Zapier can access that?
So it will still prompt me to select my account. So I have to be logged in, but you can still select this here, even if you don't have a Gmail account.
Got it. Oh, okay. Interesting.
Get there. So now, again, based on their integration, I have a list of events that I can pick from. So again, this is the if in the if then. So what we're going to do is we're going to select an email that matches a given search. So if an email comes in, think of searching your email and you might look for a certain phrase. Basically, Zapier is going to search when a new email comes in, look for that phrase. And if it matches that phrase, then the automation will continue. So my next step here, this is where I'm going to be choosing my account. So if you're not logged in, you will have to log in. I'm going to select the account that I want to link, and then I'll click continue. And the fields that pop up here are going to be based on the integration that in this case Gmail has with Zapier, and based on what actual event that I picked. In this case, I picked a search, so I actually need to type in that search. What do I want Zapier to look for when a new email comes in? Something very original we'll look for this is a test, and you may see, depending on what you pick, a series of required and non-required fields. This one is super simple, so it actually only has one field, but obviously it is required. I mean, if you're going to trigger off of a given search, it makes sense that you would have a search term here. So that's all there is to setting up a trigger, but I do have the opportunity to test that trigger. And I would highly recommend always running a test before you move on, because it will actually pull data from a successful test, and you'll be able to use that when building your action, which is the next step here. So I'll click test trigger, and what I'm looking for is Zapier to find an email in my inbox that matched the search criteria. And I did send myself an email earlier, and it had this phrase in it. So here's my inbox. Here's the email here. Test subject was the subject. So we can go back and check. Subject, okay, test subject. So yeah, so it picked up that email successfully. If you wanted to dive in more, you could see, hey, did it pick up any emails that didn't meet that search criteria? In which case, something has gone wrong there. So again, Zapier won't do all of it for you. It'll still call it successful, even if it didn't, fully go back and check every possible edge case. And here it returns you can see a ton of data from the email. So way more than we'd ever need. I can't imagine creating a Zap off of some of this stuff, but it is there, like, all the attachments, the number of attachments, it goes on and on and on. But the important part is it found what we were looking for. So now it automatically dropped me into the trigger. So this is the then of the if then. And in this case, what we want to do is, as I mentioned, we want to print to Google Sheets. So before I do that, I want to give another shout out to Zapier's built-in tools here. So some of these are, they definitely get into that more complex area. So be careful about using them. But if you wanted to create a path, basically saying if this happens, then go down this path. And if this happens, go down this path. So that's something we won't talk about today, but I want to mention it because it is pretty powerful.
Zapier 201, join us later.
201, yeah. Filtering, we actually will look at this at the end, but this basically allows you to further narrow down your trigger here. Data formatting, so if you have data that comes in, say for some reason you only wanted to look at the first word of the email subject, you could filter out only or format the data so it deleted the second word and only had the first word. You can make it all capital letters. There's quite a few things you can do if you want to change the data that comes in. And then, of course, delay. So we'll talk about Zapier's kind of built-in timing, but you can also change that. You can speed it up by paying more, or you can use this to slow it down. But we'll connect our Google Sheets. So again, I've selected my app here, and the first step is going to be selecting from the pre-built list based on the integration that Google Sheets has with Zapier. So in this case, I want to create a new spreadsheet row. Now it's going to ask me for an account. I'll link my account. And now it's going to make me actually find the spreadsheet, because you don't want it just applying to any spreadsheet. You've built a specific one where you want this data to live. And then, of course, a worksheet. I just have one sheet here, so we should just see sheet one. Yep, there it is. And now it's going to this, actually going to this spreadsheet, and it's looking, hey, what are the headers here? So from subject to date and time.
I just want to say that's so cool.
Subject, date, and time.
That's so powerful. Like, that's really neat.
So I want my, I'm going to print the name of the sender. I want that to appear in the from field. Not surprisingly, I want the subject to appear in the subject field. And then I'm going to have the date and time appear in that date time field. Now, these are all kind of variables. So you can see that they've been populated based on this test that we ran. So when I click test, it's important to test that trigger, because that will allow the data to flow through here and make it much easier to see what am I actually going to, in this case, print to my spreadsheet. So I will also mention that if for some reason you wanted to say not have a variable there, you just wanted to print the exact same thing every time. Not sure that totally makes sense in this case, why you would want to do that, but you could just print literally the word subject here. So we'll actually, we'll partially add that in. So you can see that now I'm printing the word subject colon and then the actual subject here. So it's kind of a little bit of a combination there. I will also say that you can do very basic formulas here. So instead of the date and time, let's say we wanted to print the, and again, this, I have no idea why you'd want to do this. But let's say we wanted to look at the number of attachments, and we wanted to add 5 always to that number of attachments. I can do a very basic formula. It's not Excel. There's not, thousands of different things you can do with it, but the basics, it will definitely do. So in this case, it would print 5 in that category based on my math here. So we will exit out of that, put our date back in, and now the only thing left to do is test this. And it's important to know that when you actually test your action, what it's going to do is it's going to take that trigger test that we already ran, and it's going to actually run that through my action. And you're actually going to see what would happen as if this zap was turned on. So when I test, I should actually see something appear in my spreadsheet here. So if I test and continue, looks like it was successful. And I come here and looks like I've printed what I wanted to print. I have my number formatting off a little bit. Let's change that to date time format. There we go. So this is the date and time the email was sent, the subject, and the from name right there.
Yeah, just to be clear, that's not the date and time that the zap was run, right? That's, as you said, that's from yesterday, an email you sent yourself yesterday.
Yep, the time that in that case, that was the email sent. So, and then the last thing to do is just turn it on. So once it's on, it will run. Depending on your paid, if you're on a free plan or a paid plan, Zapier will basically check your email in this case, or check the trigger. It does depend on the app. Some apps have kind of a premium service that speeds it up for you, but it's going to be somewhere between 1 and 15 minutes. So if I sent myself an email now that met this criteria, I wouldn't, if it likely wouldn't show up immediately here. Zapier has to go out and check, did this meet the trigger criteria? So don't expect kind of instantaneous, it to work instantaneously and think that you've made a mistake when you actually haven't. So you do have to give it some time. I won't click on it, but you can see all your history of the zaps, which can help with sometimes debugging. You can see your errors, which are sort of useful. It really depends on the zap and how they built the integration. But it is challenging just given the combination that Dan mentioned, thousands of apps and many more different triggers and actions. It is hard to, it kind of makes sense why it's not super valuable, but you can see that. So
Emery, we have a question. I know you're sort of
Great.
rounding home. It's kind of a bigger picture question. So maybe I'll let you finish and then we'll jump to it.
Okay, sounds good. So what I will talk about really quickly is I want to go back and I want to put another step in between my 2 steps. So as I mentioned at the beginning, you can have multi-step zaps. So you could have 2 things happen. If we wanted a spreadsheet row to happen and something else, we could do that. But in this case, what I want to do is I want to add a filter. And in this case, basically what this will do is if I have an email that meets this criteria, then it's going to put it through this another filter and let me know if it meets this filter criteria, then it'll continue. If not, it won't. So I'll continue only if from email And you have some options here, but we'll do contains. Then I'll put my email in here. So I'm hard coding this in here. I'm not putting a variable because I want it to always check the same email. So it's going to make sure, okay, it meets this criteria. Now I drop here and I check this. Is the from email from eWager at Gravity Legal? And if I click continue, it's going to test and it should go forward because the email I sent to myself. So let's see. Yep. And your Zap would have continued. So what we've created here with this additional filter is fairly powerful. So if you think of any application that maybe doesn't have a integration with Zapier, but they do send you automated email notifications based on certain events happening, you've now basically turned your email and this filter into a tool that can take any of those applications and create a trigger from those. So if you have an online scheduler that always sends you a notification from no reply at scheduler.com, you can enter that in here and it will pick out emails that came from that. And then you can have your action trigger off of that. So this sort of email plus filter is a really powerful for systems that don't even integrate with Zapier.
Just to finish your thinking there, Emery. So again, if I had a scheduler that didn't integrate with Zapier, I assume Zapier integrates with Google Calendar. So I could basically use that filter and then the email kind of language that you were talking about earlier. Theoretically, could I auto-populate a meeting on my calendar?
I would guess you could do that, but it would depend on the actions that Google Calendar allows. So if it allowed you to create an event, then you could definitely do that. If not, it might be more challenging.
A little more complicated. Interesting. Cool.
So yeah, that was our demo, and like I said, that was the kind of the meat and potatoes, was to just go through and work through that together. So with that, we can dive into the questions, and we'll stay around a little bit later. I know we're bumping up against our time, but we'll stay up a little later to answer questions. But understand everybody's got tight schedules and may need to drop.
Yeah, so we had a question from Ashley who asked, will we be charged after the trial period?
Yes. Yeah, that is a good thing to note. Zapier you can always downgrade to a free plan, but they do, there's a pretty small box around the free plan. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's number of zaps run, I believe. You can't do multi-step zaps, which, as we looked here, can be fairly valuable. And then you also may need these apps to run more quickly than the lower tier plans allow. So that's something to look at as well.
Yeah, and I was going to say, from what I recall, Ashley, and I may be mistaken, I don't think that they required you to put a credit card in when you signed up for the trial. Do you recall, Emery? I don't think they did. So I don't think you'll be automatically charged. I just got my notification basically saying I have 3 days left, and they're telling me that I need to upgrade. Yeah. So so they may not automatically charge you, but yeah, you won't get access to those broader features without the paid version. So hopefully that answers your question, Ashley, but let us know. We did have one more question here, Emery, and I think this might be a Zapier 201 question. Mm-hmm. Sometimes software will offer up. Yeah, and I think I know some of this question from doing. I'll give again, just let folks know. I put together kind of a quick database using Google Sheets of all of the legal software that I could find out there that has a Zapier integration or works with Zapier. So you can go check there. But the question is, sometimes the software will offer up a webhook, but not a searchable Zapier integration. Can you still cobble together a workflow with the bare webhook?
They do have a webhook feature, and to be honest, I haven't played around with it much, so I don't want to steer you wrong. But if you come here and you make a zap, we can give it a try and see what it actually does. So this again is a premium feature. So yeah, it looks like you could potentially build that in based on using Zapier's built-in webhook feature. But disclaimer on that, I've never done it. So.
And I will say, for those companies that reached out to me when I was building the database of kind of legal tech Zapier integration, some of them said like, hey, yeah, you need to contact us, or they've got documentation on their site that shows you how to access their webhooks. So hope that's helpful, Sarah. Let us know if we didn't quite get there. I think I guess we're 2 minutes over. Jacqueline had a question. What is a task versus a zap?
A task versus a zap. That is a good question.
Yeah, I'm not personally aware of tasks in Zapier.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, 750 tasks. Oh, there it is.
So a task, I think, so the way they do it, a task is like when a zap runs, it does a task. So, if we were to turn this on, this would be one task, I believe. So you can see here, they're pricing us based on the number of tasks that I have run here and the number of zaps, but you can see the number here is quite larger.
Yeah, I'm just responding. I'll put this in the chat as well. Sarah responded and said, that's great. I think I might be ready for Zapier 201. And I was just going to respond, but I'll just say it. So I believe that, and I haven't checked this, but I've heard from other folks that Zapier has a YouTube channel, which I'm sure has got a lot of content. So you can go check that out there as well. And yeah, again, Emery, you may have said this. I think I was slightly distracted, but yeah, that is one of the ways that Zapier monetizes the platform, is they limit you to the number of kind of things you can do on their platform in a given time. And they've become a very big and very successful company. So there's lots of people who are using this at scale and frankly getting a lot of value out of it. But they've also figured out how to make it work as a business.
And again, we're hanging out, answering questions. We'll stay as long as people want, but we are over, so definitely don't feel bad if you have to go. This will all be recorded, and we'll send it out after. So.
Yeah, I think I just saw one from Jacqueline again. Let me look at it. I was just responding to Sarah here. Apparently, you can share a Zap with other people.
Yep. So every time you create a Zap, Zapier tries to get you to share it. So definitely something you can do. I'll see if I can. So I've got this share button here. And it'll basically share kind of like the overall template. It won't share, specific data or anything like that. And you can email that directly to, the person that you want to share it with.
Other questions? I'll just give a couple quick examples while we're chatting, and then we can let you folks go. Again, on my podcast and on the article that I wrote on our blog, there were some really interesting ideas. One really cool one that I liked, at least for lawyers, was anytime you do an email to a client, and again, you can use some of those filter features to do that. If you've got it all plumbed correctly, some folks do this through their practice management system. And in fact, I think this was through Clio. Anytime you do an email or a phone call, there were folks who had zaps created that would automatically add like a 0.1 if you bill hourly to the client's file for billing. I thought that was super creative way to, because I know that a lot of lawyers who bill hourly often lose time, frankly, with those quick emails or those phone calls. You can obviously also always choose to remove that or write it off or not bill for it. but at the very least, it's a nice reminder to you that, hey, I did some work on this client file and I should get paid for it. So I thought that was a pretty kind of simple but powerful Zap that folks could implement. Oh, Jacqueline, another question. I wonder if Gravity Legal wants to connect Zaps from law firms to share with each other and post links online. So Jacqueline, if you go, I'll type this into the chat. I actually was trying to build a list of cool Zaps that that lawyers had made, and I shared it on Twitter. I shared it in a bunch of Facebook groups. I didn't get a lot of interest in it, so I haven't shared it publicly. But you can find access to that list. And again, I'll just drop the form straight into here. But if I were, yeah, I'd be totally open to building up a big list of Zaps that lawyers are using that are shareable, that folks could share with each other. I think that'd be awesome. So yeah, okay,
that's
awesome,
really
Jacqueline.
cool
I'll drop that into the chat, and I'll make Emery freestyle for a minute while I dig that up. Oh, Raymond's interested in that as well. So yeah, I'll drop all those resources into the chat, and obviously we can include those in the email that we send out afterward.
Yeah, no, that's a really awesome idea. Because just from hearing what all the interviews that Dan did, there's some really creative things going on. As he mentioned, sometimes they go up into the higher complexity range, but a lot of really cool ones. So, all right, let me see.
Almost got it here. Coming soon. Cool.
All right. Any other questions, or got one? Or is that's
me.
It's Dan.
Yep, I'll pop the database. Here's the blog post on the database that folks can check out. And then I'll just give one more. And again, we'll put this all in the email as well. Here's the blog post with a bunch of cool examples. Drop that right in there. And again, we'll send this to you folks later. But yeah, tell us about your cool legal Zaps. I'd love to write an article about them, and also obviously make kind of a nice long list for folks to leverage and share. I think I'll also just quickly give a shout out in particular, and this came up, I think, in the podcast. I think I wrote about it in the article. Maximum Lawyer, which is a Facebook group that any lawyer is eligible to join. I literally searched Zapier in there, and I just found tons of examples. Now, I don't know if they're sharing those, but I bet if you hit up the owner of that Zap and said, hey, I'd love to get access to this, again, they may view it as proprietary, they may not, but at the very least, you can get some inspiration from them. So that's another place that I found a lot of really good Zapier content for lawyers. Well, Emery, I think we're at 10 past.
Sounds good.
We've done our best to give as much value as we could. So maybe we should just close by saying, if folks want to get a hold of us, if you want to learn more, I think some of you are already customers, but if you're not, you can find us at gravity-legal.com. You can book a demo to learn more about our platform and to learn more about how we integrate with Zapier right there. My email address, you can feel free to reach out to me, is dlear@gravity-legal.com. You can also, my social media drug of choice is Twitter, so you can catch me at RightBrainLaw on Twitter, which is where I hang out and share a lot of this content. Emery, do you want to round us out, take us home?
Yeah, no, just appreciate you all showing up, and we love to mess around with with Zapier. So if you have questions, definitely hit us up, and we're happy to walk through making the making of a Zap. So feel free to to schedule a demo or reach out to us for that as well. So thanks a lot, and we'll follow up with an email on the recording, and we'll hope to see you all soon.
Be well, everybody.